The bridge of the Crithian command station fell silent as the sensor officer stared at his display. Something had appeared at the edge of their territory, and it matched nothing in their extensive database. The object was small compared to their warships, roughly the size of a frigate, but that was where all familiarity ended. Admiral Vexnar, "We have an unidentified vessel at Grid 77 Alpha," the officer reported, his voice tight with confusion. Admiral Vexnar rose from his command chair, his four eyes narrowing as he studied the holographic display. The ship's configuration was unlike anything he had seen in his 40 years of military service. Its hull seemed to absorb their scanning beams rather than reflect them back. "Send standard hails on all frequencies," Vexnar ordered. "Demand identification and purpose." The communications officer worked quickly, broadcasting the Empire's standard challenge in 12 different languages. Seconds passed. Then minutes. The mysterious vessel continued on its course, heading directly toward Krethis Prime, the heart of the Empire. No response. "Admiral," the communications officer confirmed. Vexnar felt a familiar surge of irritation. In the 73 years since the Empire had begun its expansion, no one had ignored their hails. No one dared. The Crithian Empire controlled 47 star systems through military might that had crushed every opponent. Their fleets were legendary. Their weapons could crack planets. Their reputation alone made most species surrender without firing a single shot. "Deploy Interceptor Group 3, Vexnar commanded. 3 heavy cruisers should be sufficient. Disable their engines and bring them in for questioning." The order went out immediately. 3 massive warships, each measuring over 800 meters in length, broke formation and accelerated toward the intruder. Their commanders were experienced officers who had fought in a dozen campaigns. This would be routine. On Krethis Prime, the Imperial propaganda networks had already picked up the story. Broadcasters spoke excitedly about the foolish aliens who had wandered into Empire space. Citizens gathered around viewing screens, eager to watch their military demonstrate its superiority once again. Some laughed. Others placed bets on how quickly the intruder would be captured. In the Imperial Palace, Emperor Thakron himself watched the feeds with mild interest. His massive form rested on a throne carved from the remains of a defeated enemy's flagship. Around him, his advisors murmured assurances that this would be over quickly. "Perhaps they are simply lost," one advisor suggested. "Or suicidal," another added with a clicking laugh. The Emperor said nothing. Something about this situation felt different, though he could not explain why. In space, the 3 cruisers had closed to weapons range. Their commander, Captain Yelvax, ordered his ships into a triangle formation that would prevent the target from escaping. "Target their engines," Yelvax commanded. "Low power shots only. We want them intact for interrogation." The cruisers charged their weapons. Targeting systems locked on. The order to fire was given. 6 plasma bolts, each carrying enough energy to punch through a mountain, streaked toward the mysterious ship. The bolts glowed bright blue against the darkness of space. It should have been over in seconds, but the bolts stopped. They simply stopped moving, hanging frozen in space between the cruisers and their target. No explosion, no impact. The projectiles just hung there completely motionless, as if time itself had paused. "What?" Captain Yelvax stared at his display in disbelief. "Weapons officer, report." "Sir, I don't understand." "The shots were clean. They should have hit. But they just stopped." On every ship, in every command center, Crithian officers struggled to comprehend what they were seeing. Their weapons were among the most powerful in known space. Nothing could simply stop them in flight. It violated every principle of physics they understood. Then the mysterious vessel moved for the first time. It did not turn toward the cruisers or attempt to flee. Instead, it seemed to gently nudge the frozen plasma bolts. They began drifting slowly away from both vessels, their energy bleeding harmlessly into space. The propaganda networks had gone quiet. Citizens who had been laughing now watched in confusion. This was not how encounters with the Imperial military were supposed to go. Admiral Vexnar felt something he had not experienced in years: uncertainty. He opened a direct channel to Imperial command. "I need authorization to deploy the home fleet," he said carefully. "For a single small vessel?" The response came with skepticism. "This vessel just negated our weapons with technology we do not recognize. I am requesting immediate backup." There was a pause. Then, Stand by for authorization. Emperor Thakron himself appeared on the command channel moments later. His expression was unreadable, but his voice carried an edge of anger. This insult cannot stand, the Emperor declared. The entire galaxy is watching. Deploy the home fleet, all of it. I want that vessel disabled and everyone aboard brought to me alive. We will make an example that will be remembered for 1,000 years. Admiral Vexenar bowed his head. It will be done, my Emperor. Across the Krithis system, over 200 warships began moving into position. 5 enormous dreadnoughts, each the size of a small city, powered up their main weapons. The home fleet had never been fully deployed against a single target before. It was overwhelming force brought to bear on what appeared to be one small ship. The mysterious vessel continued its steady course toward Krithis Prime, seemingly unaware or unconcerned about the massive military force gathering around it. On the command station, a junior officer whispered to another, "What kind of ship could do that to our weapons?" The other officer had no answer. No one did. They could only watch as their entire home fleet surrounded the intruder, weapons charged and ready. The mysterious ship sat silently in the center of an expanding sphere of Krithian military might, waiting. The home fleet formed a perfect sphere around the mysterious vessel. Over 200 warships, each bristling with weapons, created a wall of steel and firepower that no known force could breach. The 5 dreadnoughts positioned themselves at key points, their main cannons capable of destroying other capital ships with single shots. Admiral Vexenar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and felt a measure of confidence return. Whatever technology this intruder possessed, surely they could not stand against this much concentrated power. All ships report ready. Admiral, his tactical officer announced. Open a final hail, Vexenar ordered. Inform them that they are surrounded and must surrender immediately or be destroyed. The communications officer worked his console, then suddenly jerked back in surprise. Admiral! They are responding. For the first time since entering Empire space, the mysterious vessel broke its silence. The message came through in perfect Krithian, translated so precisely that it used the formal military dialect spoken only by the highest-ranking officers. You have one chance. Stand down. The bridge fell silent. Then someone laughed nervously. The translation had to be wrong. This single small ship was telling the entire home fleet to retreat. Repeat that message, Vexenar demanded. That was the complete message, sir. Just those 6 words. On Krithis Prime, the propaganda networks exploded with outrage. Commentators shouted about the arrogance of these aliens. How dare they issue demands to the mighty Krithian Empire? Citizens called for immediate destruction of the vessel. The Emperor's advisors urged swift and brutal action. Emperor Thakron leaned forward on his throne. His voice was cold when he spoke. Admiral Vexenar, destroy that ship now. The order transmitted across all fleet channels. Every captain received the same command. Open fire with everything. All ships weapons free, Vexenar announced. Fire at will. 200 warships unleashed their weapons simultaneously. The space around the mysterious vessel lit up with hundreds of plasma bolts, missiles, and energy beams. It was enough firepower to level a continent, enough to slag the surface of a small moon. The combined salvo represented the accumulated military might of an empire that had conquered dozens of species. The mysterious ship did not move. It did not dodge or raise shields. Instead, something small emerged from its hull. A sphere no larger than a person positioned itself between the fleet and the vessel. Then everything went wrong. The first weapons to reach the sphere simply stopped, just like the plasma bolts from the cruisers had stopped. But this time something different happened. The energy from the stopped weapons began flowing backward. On the Eternal Dominion, alarms shrieked across every console. Admiral, our weapons are overloading. The energy is feeding back into our systems. Vexenar watched in horror as his displays showed power surges racing through the ship's weapon networks. All around the fleet, the same thing was happening. Ships that had fired found their weapon systems overloading catastrophically. Emergency shutdown. All weapons offline now. But it was too late for dozens of ships. Their weapons arrays exploded from within, not violently enough to destroy the vessels, but enough to leave them completely unarmed. Other ships lost power entirely, their energy grids overwhelmed by the feedback. They drifted dark and silent, crews alive but helpless. In less than 30 seconds, nearly a third of the home fleet had been rendered combat ineffective. Not a single shot had reached the mysterious vessel. "Damage report," Vexnar demanded, his voice shaking. 42 ships completely disabled. Another 73 with major weapons damage. No casualties reported, but those ships are out of the fight. How is that possible? What weapon could do this? No one had an answer. The sphere that had emerged from the ship was still there, floating peacefully as if it had not just crippled a third of the Empire's most powerful fleet. Then the mysterious ship spoke again. This time the message went out on every frequency, to every device in the Empire. Every screen, every communicator, every display showed the same text in their own language. "This is your final warning. We are the Terran Diplomatic Corps. We came to talk. Leave now, or we will be forced to demonstrate why you should have listened." Terran. The word meant nothing to the Crithians. They had no record of any species called Terrans. How could a species they had never encountered possess such technology? Emperor Thakron was no longer sitting calmly. He had risen from his throne, all four of his hands clenched in fury. "Terran Diplomatic Corps? They attack my fleet and call it diplomacy? Activate the planetary defense grid. Every weapon platform, every orbital cannon. Turn that ship into dust." The order went out. Around Krithis Prime, hundreds of weapon platforms that had stood guard for decades powered up simultaneously. These were not ship-mounted weapons. These were massive installations designed to defend against entire invasion fleets. Each platform carried cannons powerful enough to crack a moon. They all fired at once. The energy beams crossed the distance in seconds, converging on the location where the Terran ship had been. The combined power of the planetary defense grid was beyond measurement. The light from the discharge was visible from the planet's surface. When the light faded, the space where the ship had been was empty. For a moment, triumph surged through the Imperial command. They had done it. Whatever the Terrans were, they could not stand against that much raw power. Then sensors began screaming again. The Terran ship appeared in the exact same location, completely undamaged. It had not moved. It had simply not been there when the beams arrived, and then it was there again, as if nothing had happened. "Impossible," Admiral Vexnar whispered. On his command display, a priority message appeared. It was from the Terran ship, but this one was directed only to him, eyes only, highest encryption. He opened it with trembling hands. The message was simple. "Your weapons cannot touch us. Your fleet is at our mercy. This is not a battle you can win. This is not a battle at all. Stand down or watch your empire fall." Admiral Vexnar had fought in wars across a dozen systems. He had faced desperate enemies and impossible odds. He had never surrendered, never retreated, never shown fear. He was showing fear now. On Krithis Prime, in the Imperial Palace, Emperor Thakron made the decision that would seal his fate. His voice was steady, cold, and absolute. "Contact all fleet commanders across the Empire. Find their worlds. Find every planet these Terrans call home, and burn them all." The order went out across the Crithian Empire through encrypted military channels. Every fleet commander received the same directive: locate and destroy any world belonging to these Terrans. Show no mercy, leave nothing alive. The Terran ship vanished from Krithis Prime's orbit without warning, leaving the crippled home fleet drifting in confusion. Admiral Vexnar immediately sent scouts to every edge of the system, expecting an attack from any direction. Minutes passed, then an hour. Nothing happened. Emperor Thakron paced in his throne room, surrounded by nervous advisors who kept checking their communicators for updates. The planet's defense grid remained on full alert. Military installations across Krithis Prime buzzed with activity as soldiers prepared for retaliation. Perhaps they fled, one advisor suggested hopefully. "Silence," the Emperor snapped. They would not have left if they intended to flee. He was right. The first reports began arriving 30 minutes after the Terran ship disappeared. They came from military installations across the Empire, one after another, each message more desperate than the last. "Command, this is Station Valor 6. All our weapons are offline. Repeat, all weapons offline. Systems show active but will not respond to any commands." Imperial Fleet Group 12 reporting. "Our dreadnought and all escort vessels have lost engine power. We are adrift. All weapons non-functional. Garrison command on Pelthros Colony. Our ground forces report complete equipment failure. Weapons will not fire. Vehicles will not start. Even personal communicators are dead. The reports flooded in faster and faster, from 47 systems, from hundreds of military installations, from thousands of ships. The message was always the same. Every weapon system, every military vessel, every piece of combat equipment had stopped working. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Just stopped. Admiral Vexnar stared at the incoming reports with growing horror. He opened a channel to one of the affected ships. "This is Admiral Vexnar. Explain your situation in detail." A captain's face appeared on the screen, pale with shock. "Admiral, it happened instantaneously. One moment we were on patrol. All systems normal. The next moment everything went dark. Weapons, engines, tactical systems, everything except life support and basic communications. Our engineers cannot explain it. The equipment shows no damage. It simply will not function. Have you been attacked?" "No, sir. We have seen nothing. No ships, no weapons fire. It just happened." Vexnar closed the channel and looked at his tactical display. Red markers appeared across the map of the Empire, each one representing a disabled military asset. There were thousands of them. The entire military force of the Crethean Empire had been rendered helpless in what appeared to be the same instant. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" The answer came as new contacts appeared on sensors. Not just one ship this time. 48 vessels, identical to the first, materialized in orbit around Crithis Prime. One ship appeared above each major city. The display showed similar formations appearing across every major world in the Empire. The Terran ships began broadcasting simultaneously. The message went out on every frequency, displayed on every screen, heard by every citizen across all 47 systems. "This is humanity. We have neutralized your capacity for violence. Your ships will not fire. Your armies will not march. Your weapons will not function. We have removed your ability to harm others." The voice was calm, almost gentle. But the words sent terror through every Crithian who heard them. Emperor Thakron stood frozen, listening to the broadcast in his throne room. Around him, his guards checked their weapons and found them useless. His advisors backed away slowly as if distance would somehow protect them. The Terran voice continued. "We did not come for conquest. We came because the species you have enslaved called for our help. We offered you peace. You chose violence. We offered you negotiation. You chose to threaten genocide. So we have acted." On every screen a visual appeared. It showed a small moon orbiting an uninhabited planet in the Crithis system. The moon was unremarkable, just a ball of rock and ice with no value or population. "Watch carefully," the Terran voice said. "This is what we are capable of when we stop being polite." One of the Terran ships near the moon fired a single shot. There was no dramatic beam of light, no explosion of color. Just a brief pulse of something that sensors could barely detect. The moon ceased to exist. It did not explode. It did not break apart. It simply was not there anymore. One moment, a celestial body that had orbited for billions of years. The next moment, empty space. No debris field. No fragments. No trace that it had ever existed. Across the Empire, billions of Crithians watched in absolute silence. The demonstration was beyond their comprehension. They had weapons that could crack planets with sustained bombardment. The Terrans had made an entire moon vanish with a single shot. "We have been watching your empire for decades," the Terran broadcast continued. "We have documented every atrocity, every enslaved species, every genocide. 17 intelligent species wiped from existence by your ambition. Hundreds of worlds stripped of their freedom." Images began appearing on screens across the Empire. Historical records that had been buried, classified, or destroyed. Footage of Crithian forces attacking peaceful worlds. Records of mass executions. Evidence of entire populations being used as slaves. The truth that the propaganda networks had hidden for decades was now laid bare for every citizen to see. You enslaved the Ythani and worked them to death in your factories. You destroyed the homeworld of the Pelthros because they refused to submit. You have built an empire on suffering and called it strength. In the Imperial Palace, Emperor Thakron finally found his voice. "Lies, propaganda." But even as he spoke, he knew the images were real. He had given many of those orders himself. The Terran voice took on a harder edge. "Your emperor ordered the genocide of our species 30 minutes ago. He sent fleets to find our worlds and burn them. Those fleets are now floating helpless in space, their crews alive but their weapons dead. We could have destroyed them. We chose not to." Emperor Thakron felt something he had not experienced since childhood. Genuine fear. These Terrans were not just more advanced. They were operating on a level of technology and power that made his mighty empire look like primitive children playing with stones. He moved to a hidden panel in his throne room and entered a code known only to him. Deep beneath the palace, an ancient weapon system awakened. It was his final insurance, a doomsday device powerful enough to destroy Krithis Prime itself. If he could not rule the Empire, no one would have it. He entered the activation sequence and pressed the final button. Nothing happened. He pressed it again, and again. The system that had been tested and maintained for decades showed ready status on its display, but it would not fire. A new message appeared on the screen in front of him, text only, meant for his eyes alone. We disabled that weapon before you even gave the order to attack our ship. We have been inside every system you possess since we arrived. You never had a chance. Your empire ended the moment we entered your space. You just did not know it yet. Emperor Thakron collapsed back onto his throne, all four of his hands trembling. Above the planet, the 48 Terran ships hung in perfect formation, waiting. The Terran ships maintained their positions over every major world in the Empire. Days passed and nothing changed. The ships did not attack. They did not make demands. They simply waited, silent and watchful. But everything else was changing. With the military completely disabled, the iron grip that held the Empire together began to loosen. The enslaved species that had been held down by force for generations suddenly found their captors defenseless. The Ythani workers in the factories stopped working. The Pelthros refugees in the labor camps walked away from their guards who could do nothing to stop them. The Terrans broadcast continuously, not with threats, but with information. They showed the citizens of the Empire what their government had hidden from them. Videos of peaceful worlds being invaded, records of populations being enslaved, evidence of the 17 genocides that had built the foundation of imperial power. Some Krithians refused to believe it. They called it enemy propaganda, tricks and lies meant to undermine their great civilization. But others, especially the younger generation who had grown up questioning the endless wars, began to wonder if their empire was truly as glorious as they had been taught. In the imperial palace, Emperor Thakron sat alone in his throne room. His advisors had fled one by one, as they realized that staying close to power no longer offered protection. The guards remained at their posts, but their weapons were useless decorations. A priority message appeared on his personal display. It was from Admiral Vexnar. My Emperor, I must report that several systems have declared independence. Without military force to maintain order, the outer colonies are breaking away. Governors are refusing commands from the capital. The Empire is collapsing. Thakron read the message but did not respond. What could he say? What orders could he give that would make any difference? Another message arrived, this one from an unexpected source. The leader of the Ythani, a species his grandfather had conquered and enslaved 70 years ago. Emperor Thakron, for 3 generations my people have suffered under your rule. We were told that resistance was impossible, that your military could crush any uprising before it began. Now we see the truth. Your strength was an illusion. The Terrans have given us something your weapons never could. Hope. We are leaving your empire. We are taking our worlds back, and there is nothing you can do to stop us. Similar messages arrived from the Pelthros, from the Xanar, from a dozen other species. The Empire was fracturing, and he had no tools left to hold it together. Then a new alert appeared on every screen in the palace. The Terrans were broadcasting again, but this time the message was different. People of the Krithian Empire, we are not your enemy. Your government is not your voice. For decades you have been told that conquest brings glory, that domination proves strength. You have been lied to. Your leaders built an empire on the suffering of others and called it civilization. The broadcast shifted to show more evidence. Financial records showing how the enslaved species had been forced to provide resources that made Krithis Prime wealthy, while their own world starved. Military reports detailing attacks on civilian populations. Personal messages from soldiers who had questioned their orders and been silenced. Your empire claimed to bring order to chaos. The Terran voice continued, but the only chaos was what you created. The species you conquered were peaceful until you attacked them. The wars you fought were wars of aggression, not defense. Everything your leaders told you was a lie. On Krithis Prime and across the Empire, citizens watched in silence. Some were angry at the Terrans for this humiliation. Others felt shame at what had been done in their name. Many simply felt confused, their understanding of the world crumbling around them. The broadcast continued. We come from a species that once made the same mistakes. Humanity spent thousands of years conquering and enslaving each other. We fought wars that nearly destroyed our entire world. We know what it is like to believe that strength means domination, and we know what it takes to change. Images appeared showing Earth's history, ancient wars, modern conflicts, nuclear weapons that had brought humanity to the edge of extinction. Then the change. Nations choosing cooperation over conquest, building something better together. We survived by choosing to be better, the Terran voice explained. By deciding that real strength means protecting the weak, not exploiting them. That real civilization means lifting others up, not pushing them down. We nearly destroyed ourselves before we learned this lesson. You now have the same choice. Emperor Thakron watched the broadcast and felt something break inside him. All his life he had believed in the Empire's righteousness. He had been taught that the Crithians were superior, that they had a right to rule over lesser species. Now these Terrans were showing him a mirror, and the reflection was ugly. A new message appeared, this one addressed specifically to him. Emperor Thakron, your reign is over. Your military cannot enforce your will. Your people are learning the truth. Your empire is dissolving. You have one choice left, how you will be remembered. You can fight uselessly until the end, or you can face what you have done. Thakron stared at the message for a long time. Then he did something he had never done before. He activated the public broadcast system and spoke directly to every citizen of the Empire. My people, he began, his voice heavy with an emotion he barely recognized as regret. I have been your emperor for 32 years. In that time, I have told you that we were bringing civilization to the galaxy. I have told you that the species we conquered needed our guidance. I have told you that our military actions were necessary for security. He paused, struggling with words he had never imagined speaking. I lied to you, or perhaps I lied to myself and you believed me. The Terrans have shown us the truth. We built our wealth on slavery. We built our power on genocide. We called it strength, but it was simply cruelty. Across the Empire, billions watched in shock as their emperor, the absolute ruler of 47 systems, admitted defeat. The Empire is finished, Thakron continued. The species we enslaved are free. The worlds we conquered are leaving. And they should. They have every right to. What we did to them was wrong. What I ordered done in your name was wrong. He looked directly at the camera, his four eyes tired and ancient. The Terrans have given us something we do not deserve. A chance to be better. They could have destroyed us. Their power is beyond anything we can comprehend, but they chose mercy. They chose to show us our mistakes and let us decide our own future. I only hope we are wise enough to learn from it. The broadcast ended. Emperor Thakron stood slowly and walked to the window of his throne room, looking out over the capital city of Crithis Prime. In the sky above, the Terran ships maintained their silent vigil. For the first time in his life, Thakron felt small. 3 weeks after the Terran ships arrived, the Crithian Empire existed only in name. One by one, the conquered systems declared independence. The enslaved species returned to their homeworlds, carrying with them gifts from the Terrans, defensive technology that would prevent anyone from conquering them again, medical supplies, and detailed instructions on how to rebuild their civilizations. The Terrans did not leave their ships during those weeks. They remained in orbit, silent observers as the Empire dismantled itself. Their weapons stayed inactive, their ships peaceful. They had made their point, and now they were letting the galaxy respond. On Crithis Prime, the Imperial Palace was nearly empty. Most of the government officials had fled or resigned. The military, stripped of its weapons, had largely disbanded. Admiral Vexnar had removed his rank insignia and retired to his family home, unable to reconcile what he had learned with what he had believed his entire career. Emperor Thakron remained in the throne room, but he no longer sat on the throne. He had moved it aside and now sat on a simple chair waiting. He knew what was coming. The Terrans had promised that those who had committed atrocities would face justice. He did not expect mercy, nor did he believe he deserved it. On the 21st day, something changed. A single Terran shuttle descended from one of the orbiting ships and landed in the palace courtyard. The guards watched nervously. their useless weapons still hanging at their sides. The shuttle's door opened and a figure emerged. She was human, the first any Crithian had seen in person. She stood about average height for her species, with dark skin and black hair pulled back in a simple style. She wore what appeared to be a uniform, dark blue with minimal decoration. She looked utterly ordinary, which somehow made her more frightening. This was the species that had dismantled their empire in minutes. She walked through the palace halls without hesitation, as if she knew exactly where she was going. The guards did not try to stop her. What would be the point? She found Emperor Thakron in his throne room, sitting alone in his simple chair. He looked up as she entered and felt a strange sense of relief that this moment had finally arrived. "Emperor Thakron," she said in perfect Crithian, "my name is Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. You are here to execute me," Thakron said quietly. "No," Chen replied. "I am here to inform you that representatives from 17 species have requested your presence at a tribunal. They wish to hold you accountable for what was done to their people." "I will go," Thakron said immediately. "I accept whatever judgment they decide." Chen studied him for a moment. "You surprise me, Emperor. Most leaders in your position try to run or fight until the very end. What would be the point?" Thakron gestured at the empty room. "Your people showed me the truth. I spent my life building something I believed was great, and it was built on suffering. I cannot run from that. I will not. That is more wisdom than many of your peers have shown," Chen said. "But understanding your mistakes does not erase what you did. The tribunal will be difficult. Many want revenge." "They have earned that right," Thakron replied. Chen nodded slowly. "Perhaps there is hope for your species after all." Thakron looked at this human, this representative of a species he had tried to wipe out without even knowing they existed. "I have a question," he said. "Why? Why do you care what happens to species you have never met? You have power beyond our comprehension. You could simply ignore us and live your lives in peace."
"Why do this?"
Chen walked to the window and looked out at Krithis Prime. "Because we remember what it was like when we were divided, when we conquered and enslaved each other, when we nearly destroyed ourselves with weapons we should never have built. We survived by choosing to be better, but it was a close thing. We lost billions of people learning lessons that we wish we had learned sooner." She turned back to face him. "Now we travel the galaxy and we see other species making the same mistakes we did. Species destroying themselves with war, species enslaving others because they can. And we ask ourselves, if someone had intervened when we were on that path, how many lives could have been saved? How much suffering could have been prevented? So you intervene," Thakron said. "We offer choices," Chen corrected. "We do not conquer. We do not control. We show species what they are doing, give them the truth they have been denied, and let them decide their own future. Sometimes they choose well, sometimes they do not, but at least they choose with full knowledge. And if they choose violence, then we ensure they cannot harm others while they learn," Chen said simply. "Your military is disabled, not destroyed. Your people are free, not conquered. When you have learned to use power responsibly, the restrictions will be lifted." "That could take generations," Thakron observed. "Probably," Chen agreed, "but we are patient. And we have learned that real change takes time." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Your shuttle leaves in 1 hour. The tribunal will convene on Ythani Prime, their homeworld, the world your empire enslaved. Prepare yourself, Emperor. The truth is about to become very personal." After she left, Thakron sat alone for a few more minutes. Then he rose and walked to his private chambers to gather a few belongings. He took no royal robes, no crown, no symbols of his former power. He had been emperor of 47 systems, commander of fleets that had conquered dozens of worlds. Now he was simply a person who had to answer for what he had done. The tribunal lasted 6 weeks. Representatives from all 17 species that had suffered under the empire presented evidence, testimony, and personal stories. Thakron listened to it all. He did not make excuses. He did not blame others. When asked if he had ordered specific attacks, he checked the records and confirmed when he had. When survivors told their stories, he listened and accepted their pain. The tribunal found him guilty of numerous crimes. The sentence was not death as many had called for. Instead, he would spend the rest of his life working to help rebuild the worlds his empire had damaged. He would live among the Ythani, the species his family had enslaved, and use whatever knowledge he possessed to help them recover what had been stolen. It was, in many ways, a harsher punishment than execution. On the final day of the tribunal, before the sentence was carried out, Commander Chen spoke with him one last time. "The Terran ships are leaving," she told him. "Our work here is done. What will happen to Krithis Prime?" Thakron asked. "To my people? That is for them to decide," Chen replied. "We have lifted the weapons restrictions on civilian areas. Your people can rebuild their society however they choose. The only thing we have kept disabled is your military weapons. Those will remain offline until your civilization demonstrates that it can be trusted with them." "That may never happen," Thakron said quietly. "Then you will become a peaceful species by necessity," Chen said. "There are worse fates." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Emperor Thakron." "Former Emperor," she corrected herself. "You asked why we do this. I want you to understand something. We do not do this because we are better than you. We do this because we remember being exactly like you. Every human alive today is descended from people who conquered, enslaved, and killed each other. We carry that history. We live with that shame. And we have decided that the only way to honor the people who suffered in our past is to prevent others from suffering in the same way. A noble purpose," Thakron acknowledged. "Not noble," Chen said softly. "Necessary. We are trying to be the intervention we wish we had received. We are trying to be the help that came too late for us." She left him then, and Thakron watched through the window as the Terran ships, all 48 of them, lifted silently from their positions across the former empire. They had arrived suddenly, dismantled the most powerful military force in this region of space, freed 17 enslaved species, and were now leaving just as quietly as they had come. A young Krethian journalist, covering the tribunal, approached Thakron as he stood at the window. "Former Emperor, do you have any final statement for the historical record?" Thakron thought for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of everything he had learned. "No one knew what that ship was when it arrived. Within minutes, our empire was gone. Our weapons were useless. Our power was revealed as illusion. We thought we were strong because we could conquer others. The Terrans showed us that real strength is choosing not to." He paused, watching the last Terran ship disappear into the stars. "They could have destroyed us. Instead, they taught us. I only hope we are wise enough to learn." The journalist recorded his words and left. Thakron remained at the window watching the sky. Somewhere out there, the Terrans were traveling to their next destination, carrying with them technology and wisdom that could reshape civilizations. And somewhere on Krithis Prime, former slaves were celebrating their freedom. Former soldiers were learning to live without violence. A new generation was growing up knowing the truth about their history. The empire was gone, but perhaps eventually something better would take its place.